So yes, as you can tell, I'm in the music industry. Have been my whole life. I started my music business when I was 24 after I'd sung in some bands and realized I was really much better at running my band than being in it. And so I built it over time, became an expert in the field. And what I learned, the biggest lessons I've learned, are actually lessons I've learned in the last 4 years, ever since I started our company's internship program. So my company has this 2-week internship program. Interns come in, they learn how our business works, we give them training on all the things that we do. I have some mentorship sessions with them, and they do some job shadowing. And they get to figure out if they want to be in the music industry or not, and oftentimes it's not. So through this process, I learned a lot about millennials. Millennials are this 15 to 30 generation. A lot of you are here. And the news on millennials is, and we even heard today, entitlement, apathy, lazy, yeah, you. That's what we hear. And what I was interviewing, and who I was mentoring, it was not jiving at all. I was meeting people that were very hardworking, multitaskers, curious people, and very nice people with ambition. I wasn't recognizing these terms and these labels that have been put on this generation. And I started working towards determining what the difference between the two things were, the reporting and what the reality was in my office. And I'm here to share what I've learned through that process about millennials. So the first thing I want to go through is, what do millennials want? Is it any different than what other generations want? So millennials, when you survey them, and I've done thousands of hours of interviews and thousands of surveys, and what I can tell you is millennials want essentially what every other generation wants and what everybody around the world wants. They want some money, sometimes to subsist, sometimes to be rich, but they always want money, and everybody wants a little more money than they have. They want power, to have control. They want freedom. They want independence. They really must be themselves. They're very individual, very unique. And they want to influence and impact lives around them. So if you think 400 years ago, that was probably a pretty similar list. I think if you go around the world to Estonia, I'm sure it's a very similar list. So since they want what everybody always wants, they're not so different in terms of expectations, in my view. So what gets you money, power, freedom, independence, influence? And what Malcolm Gladwell in Outliers taught us, the 10,000-hour rule, many of you have probably heard of that, is that experts are those that receive the byproducts of being an expert. You don't actually set a goal that I want to make money or be independent. You actually have to set a goal, which is to be an expert at something. And there are experts in every single field. Every field has experts, and there are thousands of verticals. Plumbing has experts. Architecture has experts. Plastics have experts. There are experts in every single field, and even then in plastics, there's probably 50 kinds of experts in plastics. So there are many, many, many verticals. But in every case, from Mozart to Michelangelo to Oprah to Henry Ford and Steve Jobs, this is the model they followed. They were certain, through either passion or exposure, about who they were and what they loved and what they wanted. And then they immersed. They did those 10,000 hours. They immersed fully in it, became an expert, and they got the spoils. So this is what you could call maybe the greatness model, or to boldly go model. So if this was the greatness model, if all the people in history that achieved greatness always did this, here's the news for millennials. Here's the shocking news, the discoveries that I've made in my office. which is that that model is now the basic model to get a job. There are so many applicants for every position that if you have not immersed and made some choices, you're going to be one of those that is unemployed and unhappy. And millennials, let's be clear, have a 15% unemployment rate compared to 6 and 7% for everyone else. Millennials have 54% happiness rates versus 65% for everyone else. There's a problem. Not just how they're viewed, how you're viewed, but also in terms of how you feel and what's happening in your life. So, I'll give you an example, actually. So, about 8 weeks ago, I put an ad out for an entry-level sales rep in my company. We got, in 48 hours, 163 applicants. We called 50 for phone interviews just to see if the resume matched what we heard. Met with 21, second round of 6, hired 1. And this is happening in graphic design, this is happening in marketing, this is happening in engineering, it's happening in every field. You're hearing about, I just read an article, this is happening with lawyers. And the reason this is happening, I believe, is twofold. One, like all things, the internet. The internet means that every ad that a company puts out, it gets reposted, retweeted, forwarded amongst friends. So I used to get 12 applicants for a job. I used to go to a school, put a posting up. But now, we go on some website, and then every other website reposts it because everybody wants to be the site to go look for jobs. And everybody's applying from everywhere. So that's one reason. The second reason is globalization, which is something that is unprecedented. No generation ever has had to face globalization growing up. So what are the effects? The effects, in my view, are that the great normal, hardworking, honest, common sense, punctual, normal person doesn't have any jobs to apply for. They're overseas. You're just a hard worker. You just want to have a job, have a family. You want to have that house. Well, those things are what everyone wants. However, the glut of those jobs in the last 10, 15 years have been moved to Mexico, China, India, because of globalization. So if you haven't determined that you are one of the 163, then you're not going to even make anywhere close to the finals. You won't even make top 15. And that's for every position, every time. So when someone's graduating from university, if they haven't fully immersed, and by immersion, let's go back, immersion means, do you know who the companies are? Do you know who the players are? How does the money work? What do contracts look like? What are the politics? Are you following the blogs, the tweets? Are you interning in the right places? Are you volunteering? Reading the right books? Are you a member of the right association? Are you getting the monthly newsletter? Etc., etc., etc. Immersion means that you're fully in. And those are the only people being considered for these jobs because you post the job and you have your choice. And when you have your choice, you check off more and more things on your list. So globalization means that if you haven't chosen, if you haven't immersed, if you haven't vertically, cumulatively, organically grown your experiences on a narrow band, then in this new world, in this new marketplace, you're cooked. Sorry for the bad news. But this is true. I have a little bit more bad news. Just at a time when certainty is the key. Certainty is the key to breaking through the pigeonhole. Because remember something. There's no more front door. There are no front doors. There are only front pigeonholes. And, Dad saying, son, just get your foot in the door. You're great. So much on your education. You're great. You're honest. You're nice. You're hardworking. Everything's great about you. And it's all true. The kid's like, Dad, there's no front door. There's no front door. I'm answering everything. Everyone's answering every ad, everywhere. I got this education. So, in order to break that, you need to choose. However, just while this generation needs to be really certain, they are the least certain generation ever. But not your fault again. Again, it's an unprecedented factor called the internet. No one's ever been brought up with every song, every movie, every TV show, access to every person, every government, every ideology, every strange, kinky thing. You know what I'm talking about. Right? Every store, every set of shoes, right? Everything. And this generation, the way I see it is, this generation's on a football field. And there's a buffet table from one end zone to the other end zone. The most amazing buffet table you could ever imagine. And millennials are walking around with these plates. And people, other generations are saying to them, you're apathetic. And you're lazy. Look at you, you're entitled. They're stunned. I think they're stunned. My analysis, and I'm not a psychologist, is I believe they're stunned. No one's ever had to face everything before. It's kind of a big deal. I really believe that. And so I believe that is causing a lot of uncertainty. Because even when you think about the job market, you used to have to think of 12, 20 jobs? When you were growing up in Estonia, how many jobs was that? Like a farmer, post office, firefighter, reception? I mean, how many were there? I don't think my dad had more than 15 or 20 to choose from. Now, thousands and thousands, really. So that's the good news. The bad news is no one's choosing anything. Well, except those that are, and they're kicking everyone's butt. So let me move on to the good news. So that's the bad news, is that this confluence of events, of the most uncertain generation because of so much volume of information and knowledge, the smartest generation, I think, ever, the most educated, the most exposure, what you guys know at 20 compared to what I knew at 20 is not comparable. So the most uncertain generation in a time where you need to be certain. So I have found some ways to turn on the certainty. There's a button. There's a formula to turn on that certainty. It took me a while to get to it, but I got to it. And I've been doing it by the hundreds. And it's working, and it's helping. And I'm here to share it to you and give it to you. I changed my mind. No, I won't. So there's two ways to achieve certainty. One is luck. There's some people that grow up with that, they just know. Every Olympian you're going to see at the Sochi Olympics, every single one of them, figured it out pretty early that they want to do that. There's some people that just are Steven Spielberg making movies at 5 years old. There's all kinds of stories of great people figuring out very early. So luck is one way. So if that didn't happen to you, which is 19 out of 20, I don't think that happens. So if you're completely normal and you haven't been hit by lightning, in terms of, I am obsessed about one thing and I must do that, if that hasn't happened to you, which it has to happen to you, we're going to work on that. But if it hasn't, then what we need to do is manufacture that obsession. It's critical to achieve that certainty. Now, do you just randomly just choose something? No. There's a lot of flailing going on too, and that's no good either. There's a lot of wrong and strong going on out there. I'm not sure that's good either. But there is a formula for turning on a millennial, certainty-wise. And that is, certainty is the intersection of passion and strengths. We've heard a lot today about passions. And passions are very important. Do you have a passion for the environmental movement or for diplomacy or for finance? There's passion of things that are naturally inherent that you just love and you want to do the arts possibly. But that must intersect with your strengths. It is a mind and heart exercise. The only way a millennial will immerse in something is when their heart is convinced and their mind is convinced. They both must be equally convinced. I have people coming in from certain families where they were brought up and it's like it's piano, it's cello, it's Kumon, and you're going to be an engineer or a lawyer or a doctor, and everything else is not an option. You know people like that. So there's a lot of that and that would be this side. Doesn't matter what your passions are or what turns you on. Here's the list. Now, there's also other people that come in with completely the other side. Oh, Johnny wants to be a singer. Oh, go ahead, Johnny, be a singer. Whatever you dream of, honey. Oh, just follow your passion. You could be anything you want to be. I don't buy that. I do not tell my kids, you could be whatever you want to be. I do not. And some people at dinner parties think I'm a monster for that. But I really don't believe it's true. It has to combine in context with the person's strengths. Are you organized? Are you disorganized? Are you a people person? Are you more of a salesperson? Are you a management type, a diplomatic type? Are you like a people person? Are you a hermit in the corner of the machine, loving the data, loving the research? There's all kinds of beautiful people. No, it's true. There's some beautiful machines. I hire some. And but they want to be, let's say, in music industry, but they're a machine. What do? I triangulate them, because there's lots of data in the music industry. So there's every type of triangulation possible. I remember this one situation where there was a young man that came in. He had just finished, came in for the summer. He just finished his third year of psychology. And there was like total parental pressure. Like, it was one of those situations I just explained to you. You must do this. And he was kind of good at it, but just was not juiced about it at all, was not immersing in anything, was just doing the education part. Wasn't figuring out who the future employers might be, what internships might be possible. He wasn't figuring out anything. He didn't have a passion for it. So then I started drilling him and asking him, so what is it that turns you on? And his answer was esports. I don't know if anybody knows what esports are, but he introduced me to this world where there's like these teams, like Team USA against Team Japan, and they go to the stadium, and like there's just full of people, and there's like soccer announcers, and there's teams competing against each other in video games, like war games, and they sell tickets, and it's a huge business. And I'd never seen it. Maybe you haven't seen it before, but he introduced me to this world. I couldn't believe it. And he was really passionate about it. He knew all the players, all the situations. He knew how the money worked. He was really into it. And then in our exit interview, in the last like half hour, we triangulated it to being an esports psychologist. He cried. I cried. Honestly, it was so amazing. Because, it was all of a sudden, he had purpose and impact and meaning. And he took his strength and his education and his talents, he took the cold, hard facts and triangulated them with what he cares about. And that's the only time where you'll find somebody change their behavior and see the world in a different light and make the right choices. Do I take this internship or this one? Do I read this book or that book? Do I join this association or that one? Do I take this extra class or do I not? The only way to know the answers to those questions is to actually have some sort of destination and to have some form of certainty. And you can't cheat the certainty. And I don't have time to individually interview each of you and go through this process with you, but if you know what this process is, believe me that you need to have your mind convinced based on your strengths. Here's who I am. And mix that with, here's what I love. And the intersection of those two, and because of the thousands of verticals, I haven't seen a situation where you can't find an answer. You can. There's some strange things out there. There are some, no, the career-wise, there's everything you can think of, I think, exists in terms of combinations of industry. I mean, you could take the squarest industry like banking and take someone whose strengths are completely people person and flamboyant customer service. They just want to run parties. There's people throwing parties at TD Bank. They sponsor all kinds of arts events. They have all kinds of internal parties. It exists. Everything exists. Every company has every type of strength breakdown there is. Every industry does. The arts industry has data people, and the hardcore people, the finance people, they have all kinds of, I guess, people like me. So everything exists. So it's a question of triangulating and believing that you must have both. It's the only way to crack that code and to go from just going to school to having purpose, knowing why you're doing it. And then your choices will be much smarter, and your life will change. Go boldly. Thank you.